From the global headquarters of the Asgard Company in beautiful downtown Wichita Falls, Texas. From the finest mind in the modern fitness industry. The one true voice of the strength and conditioning profession. The most important podcast on the internet. Ladies and gentlemen, Starting Strength Radio. Thank you, Mark Wolf. Appreciate the intro. Thank you for joining us again on Starting Strength Radio. We're here with our friend Nick Delgadillo today. And today we are going to start a new series of discussions here on Starting Strength Radio. We're going to talk about the two-factor model of sports performance preparation. And I'd like to refer you, just for background, to the article we wrote on that topic on the website, and I think it's just called the two-factor model of,
I believe so,
sports performance. Something similar, easy to find. Look it up in the article section. It's under my name, and you can prepare by reading that. But basically, the two-factor model is recognizes that a performance in sports occurs at a certain period, in a certain time frame. Sports have a season, competitions have a date, tournaments have dates. Your preparation leads up to that event, and there's two different components of preparation: training and practice. And we'll talk more about this later, but today we're going to talk with Nick about fighting and training and practice for fighting. Nick, what is, for those of us that don't know this, don't have this all memorized, what's your background in beating people up? For instance, could you have helped Andy know
who the hell's
yesterday in Portland?
I don't know who that is.
It's the guy that got beat up yesterday in Portland.
How did he get beat up?
Andy 5 beat him up. Real bad.
No, there's too many of them.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah.
They beat the piss out of him.
That's why you need to carry 18 rounds.
Yes, 18. He could
have
probably shut some of that down with the first 8 or 10 rounds at least. But it's Portland, and you're not allowed.
You're not allowed.
To
so you can't defend yourself
in Portland, and the police aren't allowed to help you either.
Yeah.
And put him in the hospital. Little concussion, had a little bleed. Kept him overnight.
Because even though there was a bunch of them, they weren't able to effectively beat him up.
No, they don't know how to. Yeah. No, they just threw a milkshake at him. Threw a rock at it. Really, one of them goes like that. That's how Andy 5 fights.
And he actually slipped and got kicked a few times.
Yeah, he fell down. He got kicked.
I can visualize
He's got
the whole
a big
thing.
chunk out of his lower eyelid here, and he's, they hit him in the head. Those guys are running around swinging bike locks on the ends of chains that they carry.
Yeah.
I don't know why none of them have a proper knife
because they can't have them.
Because they can't have knives in Portland.
Yeah.
That actually looks bad or something. I don't know what the deal is.
What was this guy doing around these assholes?
What he was doing was filming them.
Oh, he's a journalist.
He's a journalist.
Okay.
He's a photojournalist. He happens to work for Quillette.
Yeah.
And he was just walking along with them, filming.
Yeah.
And he's done this several times, and he's just a journalist, and he gets labeled a conservative journalist when Anti-5 beats him up because they're left.
Of course, right.
Right? So who you get beat up by defines who you are.
Yeah.
If you were beat up by the Proud Boys, they don't seem to be famous for doing that. But if you were beat up by the Proud Boys, you'd be a leftist journalist.
That's
right?
Yep.
And since he got beat up by these fascist, anti-fascists, he's a conservative journalist, even though he's not. He's, he's a gay journalist, and he just happens to be interested in people getting beat up by Antifa. So they beat him up pretty bad.
Jeez.
And I looked at some of this video, and it didn't appear to me that he had any of the tools necessary to defend himself, because I mean, it's Antifa. These people are.
If he expected to get beat up,
turds.
Sure. And if he expected
know?
to get beat up, he would have hopefully taken some precautions.
You would think.
You would think.
But none
he wasn't
were taken.
he wasn't expecting to get beat up. And
I don't think he was. I think it was because he'd done this before, and I don't think that he'd ever been hurt this bad, but he got hurt pretty bad.
Yeah.
And he could have been hurt a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
Somebody hits you in the head with something. I don't think most people understand that it's not like in the movies where you get hit in the head and you're unconscious for 10 minutes or a convenient period of time for the script, and then you just miraculously wake up. Somebody hits you in the head with a crowbar, you're gonna be fucked up.
Yeah, it's not gonna be good.
It's not gonna be good. Fractured skull's a bad deal. Lifelong consequences.
Right.
And Andy was not prepared for this. I mean, there's a case to be made for everybody. Everybody ought to know what to do in a fight.
Yeah.
Because you can't control when it's going to be. Sometimes things overwhelm you when you don't intend to be antagonistic, when you don't intend to be in a fight. Sometimes it happens that they come to you and attack your ass, just like they did him.
Yeah, and the moment to figure out that you don't know how to fight is not when you're in the middle of a fight.
When you're in the middle of the fight. So when you're on the ground getting kicked in the head by some fucking clown with Doc Martens on.
Right.
And a fucking pussy black mask over his face, and pussy fucking
in one of the
goggles and a pussy hat on his head, so the little pussy can't be recognized because he's a pussy. Everybody in Antifa is a pussy.
In one of the most well-off cities in the most well-off country in the world.
Everybody in Antifa is a pussy.
God damn it! I'm gonna have to
is a fucking
protect
pussy.
myself from Antifa now.
Yeah, you are. So am I.
So are you.
I don't mind doing that.
There's no Antifa in North Texas, at least in Wichita Falls.
Not yet.
Not yet.
And they maybe tomorrow.
They won't last long here.
No, it's too hot here for Antifa.
It's too hot. Yeah, the masks make you sweat too much.
We don't have enough coffee shops.
Yeah. Everybody has guns.
Everybody has guns.
It's amazing. You don't see a lot of like people getting robbed, or you don't see mob attacks.
You don't see carjackings.
Even in Dallas.
You don't see carjackings.
Every once in a while, you get some asshole. What did this guy do the other day? He like wanted to have a shootout with the cops. Did you hear about this?
No.
He dressed up in a bunch of stupid tactical gear.
Oh yeah.
And did he go to a bank? Where did he go?
That was I read about 3 weeks ago.
And then the Dallas cops just took him out. It was
they just shot him.
Oh, it was a government building. Yeah.
Just shot him. Yeah, that's exactly what they should have done.
But
or like those two guys that tried to invade the book signing
the Muhammad drawing contest.
Muhammad drawing contest.
Jeez.
That was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And these guys,
it didn't last
these
long.
guys got out of the car and started running at the building, going Allahu Akbar or whatever it is they say, and the off-duty cop that's outside just pulled his Glock out and went
and shot him. Yeah.
Whap!
Yeah.
Whap! And they're dead.
Yeah.
And that's how it should.
Yeah.
That's just perfect. Oh my God, that's how it's done here. But in Portland, apparently,
it's wide open season.
Open season.
Gun-free zones, man. So here's the deal. So the answer to your question, first of all, is none of us are likely to get involved in these kind of situations. Right? So we're not likely to get robbed. We're not likely to get beat up. We're not likely to get stabbed, shot. We're not likely to be involved in an active shooter situation. But with that said, I personally,
especially if we don't go to Portland,
especially if you don't put yourself in shitty situations, right? Which is a smart thing to do. So number one problem is most guys, especially, think they already know how to fight.
Yeah,
and they don't.
Just because they're guys.
Just because they're guys. It's just built into us. We all think we're badass. And then the other thing is that just in general, it's good. I believe it's good for everyone, not just guys, but everyone, to be able to fight. So just to even have an understanding of what fighting actually is. And let's not even talk about just individual styles or whatever, but the idea that you and another human being are competing with each other with some stakes involved in a very close and physical encounter. Even if, and I'm not talking about street fighting, but where you're training and you're practicing this stuff, it gives you a perspective that is important that a lot of us in this comfortable technological world don't have.
Right.
You get a lot of people walking around who have these silly ideas about their status and their position in life that is all completely made up. Because at the end of the day, we're still animals, we're still mammals, and we still have this hierarchy thing in our brain. So when you get on the mat with somebody, it humbles you because you know you're not a badass because there's somebody better than you, right? And it's hard and it's difficult and the process is hard.
You can be beat.
You can be beat, right? So all the fantasies go away, all the things that you put into your head from the time you're a little kid about what fighting is like, about
and what you're going to say in certain situations,
what you're going to do,
running your mouth, that sort of thing. Yes. If you understand that you may be running your mouth at the wrong guy, you tend to.
And guess what happens when people train?
Like when I said Antifa was a bunch of pussies. That kind of running your mouth.
Yeah.
Except that that's true.
That's okay. Yeah, that's all right.
Except that part's true. Right. The masks and everything.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Right. What you find is that when you're around people that train hard and that actually do things that are difficult and have fought other human beings, even if it's not competitively or just even in training, those are some of the best people you'll ever deal with because there's no bullshit. There's no bullshit. They know what they're capable of at a very, very real level. They know what they're capable of.
Right. They know what they can get into and what they can get out of.
That's right. Yep. In all my years of doing this stuff. I got into fighting stuff in my early 20s, like 21, 22. And in that time, I've gotten in one serious fight. And it was a huge mistake, dark time in my history. But but since then, as I got more experienced in that kind of world, you just start avoiding things. And you know how to avoid things.
Right.
You don't want to be in those situations.
You cannot always control the outcome of this thing. Like the Antifa pussy might sneak up behind you while you're dealing one of his buddies and hit you in the head with a bike lock.
Yeah.
Like a pussy.
Yep. There's one guy in that group.
Take a sucker punch or stick a shiv in your ass.
Right.
And there you are bleeding out like our friend Konstantinov's.
That's right.
There's
one guy in that group.
The baddest motherfucker on earth is dead.
Yeah. You've got 20 people who are, to put it in your words, pussies.
Yes.
But you have one guy in there who's not.
Or even if he is a pussy and he's willing to sneak up behind you,
he's willing to go another level
and stick you in the back.
Right.
You're still going to bleed out.
Because there's that group mentality and everybody's kind of jumping in. But there's one guy who's real serious about this.
Right.
And he wants to hurt you.
Yeah.
And you can't predict that. No. You can't predict when that's going to
happen. And you can't control it because you can't see 360.
Yeah. Right.
And you just don't need to be in the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it is with a bunch of Antifa pussies.
Sure.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So fight practice teaches you these important things.
Sure, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, so, anyway, let's answer the second question, which is my background, I guess. So, I always liked martial arts. Everybody does. You like Bruce Lee and fighting movies and kung fu and stuff like that when you're a kid. But martial arts in my head growing up was going to the karate school. That was what was everywhere. There's karate and taekwondo everywhere. And I was never interested in wearing a uniform and doing katas and sensei and all that stuff. So I never got into it. I played football, played rugby. I liked violent things. And in my early 20s, a friend of my brother's told him about Muay Thai. He was doing Thai boxing. And he invited us to come. I was like, I don't know what that is. I looked it up online in the beginnings of the internet. I saw some pictures. I was like, this looks cool. So we went down and we go into this little basement Gold's Gym downtown St. Louis, and I was blown away. There's about 8 people in there, and these guys are kicking the shit out of these pads, and nobody's bowing, nobody's doing any formal stuff. And I was like, well, this looks like boxing. This looks like actual fighting,
Right. Not a bunch of dojo shit.
Yeah. So that was it. I was in. And I started training in that stuff. Through that, this was Ron Smith's Muay Thai Academy back in St. Louis. And from there, we did some submission grappling stuff, too, which was my first exposure to any kind of wrestling or anything like that. And from there, I was training anywhere from 5 to 25 hours a week, depending on what was going on. Then I got into Krav Maga. Krav Maga, by the way, is mostly bullshit. You know, it's like CrossFit now, where you it started with good intentions and it's just spread too fast, too quickly.
Too fast,
affiliate
too quick,
type thing.
Too much commercial potential.
Sure. And
lost sight of the whole point of the whole thing.
Right. Yeah.
But in its purest form, what is Krav Maga?
Yeah, in the purest form, so you can think of it in terms of like principles. It's taking stuff that from boxing and whatever stuff works and trying to put it together into a system that you can take somebody who's never done any fighting and get them proficient pretty quickly. All right. Now that sounds like a good idea and it works pretty well. But the vast majority of Krav Maga going on in the world is basically fitness, you know, with some self-defense kind of stuff thrown in. But there's no real actual fighting going on there. So over the years, you know, I taught Krav Maga for a very long time, was certified through all the big organizations and stuff. But over the years, you know, I learned more about fighting, got more involved in fighting, actually did some serious training with people. You know, you put on a suit and you actually try the things that you're teaching in self-defense class, and you quickly realize that shit doesn't work. You know, if somebody grabs you and does this, it's not gonna work.
Many martial arts depend on, how would you say it, an understanding between the two people that are fighting that when I kick you, you're supposed to do the following thing.
Yep.
Right, I've seen that a lot.
Yep.
It's you go to demonstrations and you sit there for 10 minutes and you realize this is choreography.
Sure.
This is not fighting. This is choreography. That's all it is.
It really is. And then it's completely unrealistic in terms of how people are actually. So there. Let me give you an example. There's a lot of really popular videos out on social media and on YouTube of guys doing really, really amazing looking things. In terms of like self-defense, you know, combat, tactical, all this shit that you hear people say. But, you know, all you got to do is watch the guy that's being demonstrated on and ask yourself, is that actually what somebody would do in this situation?
Right.
You know, so for example, someone chokes the instructor and he does this awesome move, throws the guy on the ground, and then it looks impressive. It's fast. It looks cool. But look at the other guy. Don't watch the demonstrator. Watch the other guy and see if I was being choked like that, would I actually do that? And usually you just see a guy who's kind of just going along with it, right? So that's, you know. So anyway, my point is that the thing that I've tried to do over the last 10 years is try to figure out stuff that actually works. So you know, and that means pressure testing. You know, you teach somebody a technique, and you have to test it, and you can't test a headbutt. But if you put a suit on somebody, now you can test the headbutt. And even though you're not creating any actual damage, there's still a reaction, right? Because your brain will still say, oh, shit, something's coming at me. So anyway, I've hooked up with various people over the years. More recently, like Fit to Fight, Ryan Hoover and those guys, they're doing not Krav Maga, but really Krav Maga in a much better way now. And along the way, you know, still have done Muay Thai, taught striking, and then have gotten into jiu-jitsu, especially more recently. I've always kind of been involved. But for the regular person, so here's my point, I guess. For the regular person to learn how to fight, if you can find a good self-defense instructor, someone who can teach you how to actually fight without beating the hell out of you, and it can be done, that's who you want. But those people are very, very rare. They're very few and far between. So your next,
probably as rare as good barbell coach.
That's exactly right. It's a great analogy. So the next best thing is I think Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or wrestling. Now there's no wrestling that adults can do typically, right? You got to do it in high school. There might be some wrestling clubs out there and stuff, but you know, so we're left with Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu is very, very popular, and from day one, you're wrestling with somebody and applying these techniques that you're learning against somebody who doesn't want you to do it. Right, you learn an armbar, you learn a choke, and this guy doesn't want you to choke them. So you're having to learn this stuff from day one. So anyway, at this point, jiu-jitsu is kind of my thing. I ran a little Krav Maga school here for a little while, got too busy, and now I'm just focusing on jiu-jitsu. As far as training for this stuff, if you're talking about actual fighting, and you see this in the evolution of things like the UFC. If you're talking about actual fighting, it ends up looking very much the same. right? So if
Right.
you think about it,
Once we're on the ground.
once we're on the ground, if we're standing up, guess what? Everybody's throwing a Muay Thai kick. Everybody's punching like a boxer. They're doing takedowns like a wrestler, and they're doing groundwork like a jiu-jitsu guy, because this is
Right.
all the stuff that actually works.
Right.
The MMA fighter is good at putting all that together into a complete package, right? So, and if we went back thousands of years and you looked at what the Greeks were doing in those early Olympics, I bet it looks very much like what's going on now in MMA cage.
Well, there's only a couple of ways to solve
Exactly.
the problem.
Exactly. If you're going to throw a hard kick, there's only one way you're going to throw a really hard kick.
Yeah.
If you're going to defend
just
yourself,
mechanics,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. So, so in terms of training, people, it all kind of looks the same, and getting to our discussion here, it's all about force production, and there's so much technique involved. There's so much time that needs to be spent gaining experience on the mat, practicing, pushing and pulling with another individual, being locked up, learning how to be efficient in your movement. That it's easy to blur the training and practice thing.
And it is for lots and lots of sports. And this is why the two-factor paradigm is so useful, because it allows us to correctly analyze the act of preparing for a performance, no matter when that performance might take place, in any number of sports, but for today's discussion, for fighting. Strength is force production against an external resistance. The external resistance in this particular situation is the opponent. It's fairly easy to understand this. The stronger you are, the more force you can apply against your opponent.
Or the ground.
Or the ground,
anything,
but between your feet and your hands, you're generating force between the point of force application and the point of force production, which is the ground and the hands. And your kinetic chain between the ground and your hands is where the force is being produced. And it's fascinating to me that so many fight guys don't seem to understand that force production is kind of central to their deal, and they'll argue with you about this
because they're trying to they're thinking about. I mean, they all know this. They all know this. If you hear people talk, and you see them maybe commenting on a fight, and they say, "Wow, she looks real strong," they know.
Yeah,
they know, right?
They know.
Somebody's stronger and bigger.
They don't
know.
link it back to
They don't link
preparation
it. Because they want to load the movement pattern, which is functional training, right? They want to load a movement pattern rather than actually get strong.
Right. They want to load the movement pattern they're going to use in the performance, and that's not where strength is built.
Yeah.
Strength is built by loading movement patterns, but what movement patterns, when loaded, produce strength? This isn't complicated. It's the squat, the deadlift, the press, the bench press.
Yep.
And that's about it.
Yep.
That's about it. If you get your deadlift from 200 to 500, you're stronger. Now, what movement pattern are you stronger in? Well,
all
the deadlift, but every other movement pattern as well.
Right.
Because if you improve your strength involved in picking a weight up off the floor by 250%, there are very few movements that you can perform in any kinetic chain that are not applied, that strength does not apply directly to.
I would say none.
I
would say none. And what these guys don't understand, and again, this applies across all sport, right? Across all sport. They don't understand that the strength is acquired, is general, right? It's acquired generally. Let's get the whole body strong, and then through your practice, you're applying that strength into the movement pattern. What you hear is that doesn't look like fighting. That's the thinking. The process is it doesn't look like fighting. How does a squat? It's the same shit as the Olympic lifters. How does a squat help my kick? How does a squat help me when I'm laying on the ground on my back with somebody on top of me?
Right. And this is the two-factor model. Training is a pattern of what we call it is accumulating a physiologic adaptation. And the accumulated physiologic adaptation we're talking about here is strength. And the accumulation of the adaptation takes place over the whole system. The whole body is stronger. When you take your squat from 135 to 405, your whole body got stronger. Yes, the squat does not look like fighting, but it doesn't have to look like fighting. It just needs to make you stronger.
It shouldn't look like fighting.
It shouldn't look like fighting.
Because if it does, you're doing the wrong movement pattern.
You're doing the wrong movement.
Right.
You're doing a movement that looks like fighting that's not as capable of making you strong as a squat, a proper barbell squat. Now, we get you strong. And then we teach you to apply your new strength, your newly accumulated strength, to the problem of fighting by practicing the skill of fighting. And as you get stronger, and as you continue to practice, as the strength is accumulating, your strength is being applied through the movement patterns that you utilize in that particular activity to the problem, the movement pattern problem you have in the sport. And that sport could be baseball, could be tennis, could be golf, could be fighting. And if you can separate these two ideas in your mind, you'll see that for example, a classic problem that we might run into as strength and conditioning professionals is the idea that our kid who's getting stronger in the gym, his boxing coach has got him punching the bag, working his heavy bag with weighted gloves.
I did that. I've shadow boxed with 10-pound dumbbells.
With 10-pound dumbbells.
And it doesn't do a goddamn thing.
All it does is allow you to practice punching very, very slowly.
Yeah, it gets your shoulders tired.
But it is a fundamental misunderstanding of the two processes that are involved in getting better at punching. If you want to get stronger for punching, you bench press, you press, but you also squat and deadlift.
That's right.
Because punches come from the hips.
That's right. It's a ground
punches
reaction.
come from the floor.
It's a ground reaction, right?
Punches come from the floor.
The rest of it is all practicing the movement and efficiency.
And then you take your now stronger body and you punch with it.
And look, they all know this, right? Because the guy that walks into the gym the first day, whether it's a Muay Thai gym or a boxing gym or even a jiu-jitsu class, the guy who's strong because he's a bodybuilder or whatever.
Or just a strong, corn-fed Nebraska boy.
He's going to hit really hard.
He's going to hit you hard, and you know he's going to hit you hard, and you don't want him to hit you.
Yeah.
Because you know what? He's strong.
And he's going to be difficult to deal with on the ground. Even if he has no skill, he's going to be difficult to deal with.
Right. In fact, the fact that he doesn't actually know how to spar correctly with you
is actually a problem.
Makes him more dangerous.
Yeah, it is.
Makes him more dangerous on the mat because we're just sparring, and you don't want this guy pulling your head off accidentally because he could do that.
Yep.
We used to, when I was fencing a long time ago, we used to have the biggest problems we'd have is with
brand new people.
Guys that didn't know how to fence.
Yeah.
They'd slap the piss out of you with their foils and, because they don't know how to fence.
Sure.
And they'll hurt you.
Yep.
Specifically because they lack the skill to spar correctly.
Yeah, they don't have the skill, they don't have the efficiency, but the force production is there. The unbridled movement, where they just do whatever is unpredictable. Mm-hmm. And when you're used to going against skilled people, you kind of know what they're going to do. You kind of know what they're not going to do.
Yeah, and in a situation like fencing where the thing is extremely formalized and there are right-of-way rules and all that stuff that these new guys don't know.
Yeah, right.
That's more of a problem.
Sure.
But if you come into, you got a big 300-pound strong white belt jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah. It's going to be bad.
He's going to be a problem for a 185-pound purple belt.
Yeah, he is.
He damn sure is.
Yeah. Not that so yeah. That's a kind of a different discussion. This and dealing with self-defense stuff, teaching self-defense, teaching women, who are going to be smaller, who are going to be weaker, The smaller they are, the weaker they are, the better the more skill they have to have.
Yes.
Right?
To compensate for the lack of strength.
Yes. Or they need to carry weapons. You know,
Right.
I mean, that's just the truth.
So, ideal situation, get strong.
Yeah. Get strong.
Get strong. Now, there will be people that are, and you're one of them. You're listening to this right now. And you're saying, Rippetoe don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Delgadillo doesn't know what the fuck he's
Just
talking
another fat guy.
You know, the problem is Delgadillo does know what he's talking about, and Rippetoe does know what he's talking about. And, 30 years ago, I did quite a bit of fighting myself. I hadn't discussed this with many people because it's none of anybody's business, but we used to have a little group at the gym, and we'd spar twice a week at the old gym location a long time ago.
Like boxing gloves, bare knuckles? What are we talking about?
No, we were doing a kind of a informal version of shore and roo. So we were just going about 3/4 speed, not full contact, but just practicing movements and stuff and thinking about how to solve these kinds of problems. And we did this for 3 or 4 years. And we had mats, and we grapple a little bit. And I've done a little bit of this. It'd be difficult to find a guy that hadn't fought a little bit.
Yeah, hadn't messed around with it.
Hadn't messed around with it. That's what we did. But I applied some attention to it at one time, a long time ago. So I kind of, and every once in a while, I'll find myself in a situation, and the patterns of analysis that I learned are still there.
Yep.
I'm standing in a particular position. Well, if a guy comes up behind me, what am I going to do?
Yep.
My foot's thinking about it.
Right.
That's the point of doing this kind of thing for self-defense, is thinking through situations and determining in advance what you would do in that situation. I'm going out to the car. What if there's a guy waiting at the front quarter panel?
Yep.
What am I going to do?
Right.
Thinking about it. Don't ever get just absolutely unprepared. Let somebody get the complete drop on you, and that's what we're talking about. That's why you need to practice your fighting. But the two-factor model is, while it may not be important for self-defense thinking.
No, it is though. It is though.
It's certainly important for it's certainly important for competition.
It is.
If you're going to compete,
but it's also important for self-defense because the to the extent that you are going to hit somebody, you need to be able to hit them as hard as you can if you're doing self-defense. To the extent that somebody's going to pick you up and slam you on the ground or grab you, you have to be as strong as you possibly can to be able to handle those situations to the maximum, to your maximum ability, right?
Right.
And not only that, but having more muscle mass makes you more resilient.
Makes you harder to pick up, harder to move around because you'll resist.
And if you do get hit, you have more protecting you.
Right.
You have more stuff, more mass.
Sure.
Things break less easy.
Yes.
Right. So for self-defense, this thing applies absolutely. And the more self-defense oriented you are, the less you probably need to worry about cardio and all this, because that's the next thing we need to talk about is because the other side of this thing is strength is great, but what about cardio, bro? You got to have cardio to fight. When you got to have abs to fight. You got to have abs. You got to have cardio. And if you listen to commentary on MMA fights, it's like, oh, he's a cardio machine. That's why he's so good. He's cardio this, cardio that. Right. So that's going to be the big argument here. Is okay. Let's train like power lifters, and this is what you hear people say all the time. Do you want to be a power lifter? Or do you want to be a martial artist? Do you want to be a power lifter? Or you want to do this? Right. So we're not power lifting. We're getting strong.
They think that anybody with a 500-pound squat is a power lifter.
Or who does sets of 5.
Who does sets of 5 is a power lifter.
Right.
But
what about my cardio?
It puzzles me. What about your cardio? How long does a fight last?
Well, like in a ring, or like a real fight.
I mean, like
10 seconds, 20 seconds?
Yeah.
I think 20 seconds is a long time.
That's a long-ass fight. That's a long-ass. I've never seen one that lasted 2 minutes.
Oh, no.
Some altercation in some guy's front yard across the street might last that long. But if you really look at that,
if two guys don't actually know how to fight, it might go a minute, 30 seconds.
Two guys yelling at each other are not fighting.
Yeah.
Two guys yelling at each other in the front yard for 5 minutes are not fighting.
But they might be grabbing each other's shirts and rolling around on the ground or something. Right. But if anybody knows how to fight, it's going to be pretty quick. 20, 30
pretty
seconds.
Much over with
10,
pretty
20
quick.
Seconds.
And 10, 20, 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes is not a cardio situation.
Look, and even a 5-minute round is not a cardio situation.
Not really.
It's not, because it's short bursts.
Yes.
Of very, very high intensity
that accumulate to 5 minutes.
To accumulate to 5 minutes. So I've heard people, and I used to do this. I'm sparring for 5-minute rounds. I'm sparring for 3-minute rounds. So I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes and push the prowler for 10 minutes. Guess what? After the first 10 seconds, you're not doing anything like fighting. You're just trudging along behind this fucking prowler. It's not like that. So a better way to train is to do 10-second sprints on a prowler.
10-second heats.
And do them over and over and over again.
Accumulate 10.
Yeah.
10-second heats on the prowler.
Exactly.
10 seconds, rest 10 seconds, 10 more seconds.
Or even better, just practice the fucking thing.
Right.
That's an even better way to do it.
Forget
the prowler.
Get strong and spar.
Yeah.
At 75%.
Because there's nothing more specific to the thing that you're doing than actually doing the thing. So, and the problem is when the first time that somebody gets into starts sparring, first time that somebody goes to jiu-jitsu class, the first thing that they'll tell you is, oh my God, that's the hardest thing I've ever done. Their heart's beating, that doesn't feel like lifting weights. Lifting weights doesn't make you feel it, unless you're hitting a PR set of 5 deadlift. You might get close, but it doesn't feel anything like drowning like you feel on a mat. Right. So people are trying to recreate that feeling in the gym, or
when they'd be better off experiencing that and obtaining the conditioning for it on the mat
while getting strong.
While getting strong over here in another workout. In another workout. This comes up when in discussions of soccer all the time. What are we going to do for conditioning for soccer? I know you say we need to squat and deadlift for soccer and do presses and benches to get strong for soccer. But what about getting ready for soccer? What kind of cardio do I need to do getting ready for soccer? And the question is always, are you practicing soccer?
Yeah.
Are you practicing soccer real easy, or are you practicing soccer?
Yeah.
Do you not think that soccer practice provides conditioning for soccer? How often are you playing a game? Once a week? You think that 2-hour game is not producing a conditioning effect?
And if your practice isn't producing a conditioning effect, you're not practicing.
You're not practicing
right. Yeah.
You're not practicing correctly.
Because it's not only the movement pattern, it's not only the skill that you're practicing. You also need to be practicing the conditioning aspect of it. Right. So
you ought to be playing at game intensity.
Yeah, or close.
To obtain the conditioning at game intensity.
Sure. Yep.
And you can't divorce the conditioning aspect of performance from the context of preparation for the next performance.
Yep.
A soccer game on Saturday contributes to next Saturday's game.
Right.
Right? And this is true of all of these sports that people think, well, we have to go run a mile for.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yep.
Because you're playing the sport. Right? What kind of conditioning for tennis is better than tennis?
Yeah.
Tennis. If I was conditioning for if I was going to try to dream up some conditioning for tennis, it'd probably be cone drills.
Sure.
Something like that. Direction change, kind of short, rapid things like that. But I don't even know that's necessary.
I don't think it's necessary either. Yeah, because
but if that's what it would look like if you wanted to do something off the court, but on the court, you're practicing not only the circumstances that produce the conditioning effect, but you're practicing racket skills too.
Yeah, I think with conditioning, and you disagree, tell me if you disagree with this, but with conditioning, the spectrum of what's useful is much smaller than on the strength side, right? So if and here's what I mean by that. If you've got let's imagine just a spectrum or a triangle or something, and you have your sport at the top of that. the most specific thing you can do for that sport is the sport.
The sport. Yes.
And then that drops off very, very quickly.
Yes.
So anything that deviates from that, so your cone drills might be maybe one step below that. But there's not much else after that.
No, running a mile is not even in the triangle.
Right. So if you were to try to match from a metabolic standpoint or from an energy system standpoint, what you're going to need, probably the best thing is just pushing a prowler, because I mean it's not going to match the sport really, but you're using your energy systems as much as you possibly can for short durations,
right?
And then maybe some of that will transfer into your sport, but it's I don't think it's necessary. So yeah, I mean if you want conditioning, make it as general as possible so that you use a prowler or something. Otherwise, you just need to be practicing the sport. Use a prowler because it's going to do what you want in terms of the energy systems. But really, you don't even need to. You don't even need to.
That is actually a training.
That's
problem.
Training. That's exactly.
That's a training problem.
Exactly.
You're
training.
accumulating a physiologic adaptation.
And that was my clumsy way of saying that. So you're using the prowler to accumulate that physiological adaptation, where trying to do like tennis with a weighted racket or with ankle weights on, or sparring with weighted gloves, or hitting a heavy bag with heavy gloves on is too much like the sport, like the movement pattern to be of any use.
In fact, there is an argument to be made that your conditioning activities, really, and your training activities in general, whether it's strength training or conditioning training, should not look like the sport the sport practice itself, because movement patterns that are specific in terms of accuracy and precision demand specificity, so to speak. If you are going to throw a 155-gram baseball at the catcher's mitt 60 feet, 6 inches away, the practice needs to be a 155-gram baseball thrown at the catcher's mitt 60 feet, 6 inches away. You don't practice throwing it at 75 feet. You don't practice throwing it at 30 feet. You don't practice throwing a 225-gram baseball. And I know that heavy baseballs are thrown by these guys, and I just think that's insane. The more work that you can do that is specific to the performance, the better. And the less work you can do that is semi-specific to the performance, then the less chance you will have of interfering with an extremely specific motor pathway that you're trying to establish. The motor pathway practice, the part that you must do with accuracy and precision, is exquisitely specific to the performance. So you get strong for baseball by squatting, benching, pressing, and deadlifting. And you get good at pitching by throwing the ball at the catcher's mitt the proper distance away. Batting practice is the same thing. You don't practice batting with a heavy bat. If you get good at practicing with a heavy bat, where you can hit the ball with a heavy bat, what happens when you go back to the game bat? Now you're swinging it faster, and you just practiced the timing incorrectly.
And that'll make sense even to I think that argument makes sense to a broad range of people, the argument you just made. But when you involve something, so. Absolutely. I mean, it makes perfect sense. But when you involve something like fighting, there's this like magical aspect that people have in their mind.
Yes.
And that can't possibly be the same. It can't possibly be the same, because now you're involved in combat with another individual. But people don't want to understand that it should be approached the same way as any strength and conditioning should be approached. Get strong, practice your sport.
Practice the sport.
Right.
As close to the sport as you can practice it. Get strong, spar.
Yep.
Get strong. Play soccer.
Yep.
Get strong. Play tennis. Get strong. Practice football. Right? if there's a sport that has a conditioning component that you can't obtain in practice. There aren't many
There aren't
that
any.
I can think of.
What is there? What is there that would be like that?
Marathon.
Well, yeah, okay.
Now,
marathon.
you get into a situation where you've got extreme endurance sports.
Sure, yeah, I got you.
You've got, training for marathon is the same principle as training for strength. You are trying to accumulate a physiologic adaptation that you don't have right now. What's the best way to train for a marathon? Well, I don't think it's running 26.2 miles.
And they'll agree with you.
None of them do that.
None of them do that.
None of them actually do that.
But the reason for that is because the marathon is so stressful and so damaging.
You can't do it.
You can't do it.
You can't do it but 2 or 3 times a year. Even crazy people don't do it anymore than that. And
but most sports don't fall. I mean, there's cycling, there's distance cycling.
That is an extreme example.
Extreme.
That's an extreme example, and
most sports are somewhere in the middle.
Most sports are somewhere in the middle. That's absolutely true. Powerlifting and marathon.
It's the other end, right?
Are 2 sports where training and practice are kind of similar.
Right.
But even that is not absolutely 100% true, because powerlifters have to use equipment. They use heavy singles for third attempts. You can't really practice third attempts in your training, because then that doesn't look like training. You can't just do heavy singles all the time.
Yep.
And you've got to do some other stuff for it. But on that spectrum, training for powerlifting looks more like a performance than training for football does. On the other hand, endurance stuff like training for marathon and practice for marathon are kind of the same thing, as marathon technically is not complicated. There's some strategy involved in it, but it's one foot in front of the other.
Sure, yeah.
And it's just a bunch of running. Training for powerlifting is a bunch of lifting weights.
Yep.
But football, he's here in the middle.
Yep.
He's here in the middle. The game doesn't look like anything but the game. Yep. The game doesn't look like lifting weights.
Right.
So
and they used to understand this. I mean, when I played football in high school, everybody knew you lifted weights in the off season,
right,
and you did football in season.
You got big and strong.
Right. So the way I used to explain it is, it's no different than football. You train in the gym, and then you go do the thing that you're going to do, and it's just baffling. You see, the classic thing is the boxers doing road work.
Yes.
Boxers doing road work, and it's just I think they still do that.
They still do that.
They still do that. Running 5 miles. Now there might be some mental aspect of that, of being able to suffer for that long.
I can't. I really have thought about that quite a bit. I don't see any point.
There isn't any point
in road work for boxing. It's just what we've always done, so we're going to continue to do it.
Right.
Muhammad Ali did road work. So, by God, he was the best boxer that's ever lived. So, by God, we're going to do, by God, road work.
And was running 5 miles for Muhammad Ali difficult?
Right.
It wasn't. It wasn't difficult.
No.
No.
And Muhammad Ali wasn't the greatest boxer probably that's ever lived, because he ran 5 miles.
That's right. Other shit was involved.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you understand this? I hope you guys understand what I'm talking about, because this is terribly important to understand. Sometimes we're good despite the fact that the people who are training us are morons.
Yeah.
Okay? Happens all the time. Functional training for football now.
Yeah.
Past 10 or 15 years, strength and conditioning profession has jumped off a cliff. They have jumped off of the cliff. Yeah. They have decided that the weight room is the place to display the athletic ability that the recruiter hired the kids to do.
That's everywhere, though. It's not
everywhere.
It's not. Look, you've got these high-level jiu-jitsu people, and I follow them on social media and stuff. And you've got a champion jiu-jitsu player, and they're doing jiu-jitsu stuff with like a band. Like as if
that's going to make
as if
you
having
stronger.
Another person on top of you is not enough.
Right.
when you're actually doing jiu-jitsu. So let's put a band on it.
Let's put a band.
Because the strength and conditioning guy doesn't know what jiu-jitsu is. Like, he just sees a movement. He's like, oh, yeah.
Let's just load that movement.
Let's do that with a band.
Let's load the move. Let's take the movements we're going to use in the performance and load them.
Yeah.
Because that's obviously the best way to get strong for that movement.
Right.
No.
It's not.
It's not.
And
and I should not have to explain this to any of you.
Yeah.
This is, you have to understand that there's not any better way to get strong than a heavy deadlift and a heavy squat and a heavy press and a heavy bench press. There's no better way to get strong. How many weight rooms at D1 schools and pro weight rooms, at the training facility for the team are set up to do resisted rotation stuff because the sport is perceived to be rotational, right? Oh, yep. Most of them. For baseball players, just resist the rotation. Do you not understand that? Let me put this in terms that you can understand. Are steroids rotational? Do steroids act in a way that makes your rotational strength specifically strong? Are there any rotational steroids? No? What do steroids do?
Yeah, and why are they banned?
Why are they banned
in the UFC?
Because they make you stronger, generally, because strength is a general adaptation. Now, once you get your brain wrapped around the idea that there aren't any technique steroids, that there aren't any rotational steroids, that steroids just make you stronger, then you are beginning to crack the nut here of the problem. The problem is that you are either too lazy to do your heavy deadlifts to get strong, or you're relying on somebody for strength and conditioning advice that doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. All right? This is a bad problem.
Yeah.
If you understand that steroids are good for your performance, then it's not much of a leap to realize that strength is good for your performance and that the general acquisition of strength, like steroids give you, are beneficial for your sport. And they're not specific. Strength is a generally acquired characteristic. Taking steroids makes you stronger, generally. They don't make you stronger rotationally or positionally. They make you stronger generally. So do deadlifts and squats. And deadlifts and squats are not illegal. Deadlifts and squat, WADA doesn't test for deadlifts and squats. At least not yet.
Yeah, steroids don't improve your reaction time. They don't improve your ability to throw a punch, other than that they make your punch stronger.
They make your punch stronger.
Right?
They make you
power goes
able
up,
to hit harder.
That's right.
Right. So Barry Bonds has to go, favorite topic here. Barry Bonds has to go talk to John McCain. My dislike for John McCain started with the hearings, the Barry Bonds thing. Here is this pompous old man in the Senate of the United States, the greatest deliberative body on the earth, right? Who has decided to involve itself with professional sports.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sorry. I think they have other things to do.
Maybe.
But
it
budget, looks so,
maybe?
Yeah, maybe produce a budget every once in a while. But no, we got to talk to a baseball player about growth hormone and steroids in sports, okay? To begin with, that nobody in the Senate of the United States understands any aspect of either growth hormone or steroids or professional sports. They just wanted the cameras on them. They just wanted the photo op.
Do something.
They wanted to look.
Do something.
They wanted to look involved in popular culture.
Something.
They're doing something. They're making America safe for the kids.
Right, yeah.
That's exactly what the hell they're doing.
That's right.
And it made me ill. to watch these fools up there talking about Barry Bonds' trainer having once injected him with human growth hormone. What?
And
Do you
Canseco's like,
understand?
and Canseco's like,
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
and everybody else too.
John McCain's not dead yet. I'll have to go talk to him. Oh, God.
They're all sitting around the locker room like, oh, shit.
Oh, shit. Like human growth hormone does a goddamn thing for sports performance anyway. That's the But what did you do, you idiots? What did you do when you sat there and told every kid in the United States that growth hormone is all that separates you from Barry Bonds?
Yeah, that's right.
What kind of idiocy?
Yeah. Or Arnold Schwarzenegger.
This makes exactly as much sense as promising free health care to illegal immigrants. Oh, you don't think that'll make them want to come?
No, and they believe it too.
And they believe it.
They believe it too. He's a cheater. He's a cheater. Arnold Schwarzenegger's a cheater because he took steroids.
This whole thing started back in 1988 with Ben Johnson and Carl Lewis. And this was the first extremely public airing of the steroid controversy. And the news media spent about a solid month telling every high school kid in the world that all they had to do to beat Carl Lewis was take steroids.
Yep.
That's all they had to do to beat Carl Lewis is do what Ben Johnson did and take steroids. Like Carl Lewis hadn't taken anything.
Yeah.
Well,
and
but what the hell do you think you're accomplishing by focusing so much attention on something you so thoroughly misunderstand?
Sure.
And what is the net effect of that? Why, you just advertised steroids to a whole bunch of people who had never even thought about it.
Yep.
Didn't know what the hell they were, but now you've told them. And because, you're Sports Illustrated, you're ESPN, you're the experts, right? You just told all those kids that they need to go get some steroids.
And you're forcing them.
And guess what they did?
They got some steroids.
They got some steroids.
And then you're forcing these guys to lie, too. Look,
yes.
Lance Armstrong's an asshole, but everybody on his fucking team was on shit.
Yeah, like he's the only cyclist.
He's the only one, right? He's the
that's
only
ever
cyclist.
taken any drugs, any performance-enhancing
and not only
drug.
on the team, but how about in the entire thing, right?
The whole sport.
Whole goddamn
it's the
thing.
dirtiest sport on earth.
Yeah,
if you're considering drugs to be dirty.
That's
but
right.
Once again, boys and girls, what do drugs do? They make you stronger, generally.
Yeah.
They don't make you stronger in a circle. They don't make you stronger swinging a bat. They make you stronger. And what is the easier way to do it? Far more effective way to do that, especially if you've never trained for strength.
Get strong.
Get strong. Squat,
presses.
press, bench press, deadlift.
Yep.
Get strong.
Yep.
And you don't have to go talk to John McCain if you do that. Thankfully, we don't have to talk to him anymore. But you don't. What it basically boils down to is everybody knows that strength has to be trained for sports. Everybody knows
And they know
this.
it's important.
They know it's important. It's important enough that they want to take steroids to get stronger.
Yeah.
But the strength and conditioning people who abdicate their responsibility for showing their athletes how to accumulate a strength adaptation because they don't know themselves because they're not any good at their job are really kind of the gateway drug here for steroids. Because what we're doing in the weight room is dancing around with 10-pound dumbbells on Bosu balls and stuff. How am I supposed to get strong doing that? And I know I need to be strong, so what am I going to do?
Or how do I keep my knees healthy for the next 5 years
keep my
in my
knees
career?
healthy? Because strong leg muscles keep my knees from getting injured. How am I going to do that if I'm not squatting and deadlifting?
Right. Yep.
Guess I'll go get some steroids.
Yeah.
Anytime you say steroids, what you're saying is strength.
Strong, yeah, strength.
That's what you mean when you say steroids. You're saying strength. And how is strength best acquired? Squat, bench press, deadlift.
Yep.
If you're not doing that, then you're ignoring the training part of athletic preparation. You may be practicing baseball in a perfectly adequate way, but if you're not doing the other half of the preparation two-factor paradigm, then you are not prepared for performance. This applies to everything, and especially fighting. When laying your hands on an opponent and moving him around is the nature of the win.
Yep. And nobody will understand this until they've actually done it. Mm-hmm. That's the thing here, right? So everybody's comfortable doing what they're doing now, and they're hesitant to shift into another way of doing things. But for the people out there who are thinking about this stuff, thinking about how to train, how to get better at their sport, there's nothing that you can do. And this is again a fundamental thing about the two-factor model. There's nothing that you can do for a given period of time that will improve your performance more than getting strong.
Yes.
So after the initial 3 months, 4 months, 6 months of your sport, let's say you get into jiu-jitsu and you suck the first day, you don't know anything. But after that phase where you have established a level of competence where you're actually a little bit effective, beyond that point, the timeline of improving stretches way, way out. You're not going to get any much better, significantly better for another year or 2 years. In terms of skill.
Right.
But what you can do is spend 3 months getting strong, getting brutally strong, and guess what? You'll immediately be better.
Immediately be better at the same level of skill.
At the same level of skill.
Yes.
That's right. At the same level of skill.
Yes.
But it's going to require that you take a step back, get the ideas you have about strength and conditioning out of your brain, and look, just go to class, practice your skill, do your stuff, and then spend 2 to 3 days in the gym getting strong and watch what happens. You can always go back to doing heavy weighted walking lunges. You can always go back to punching with a band wrapped around your shoulder. You always go back to all that bullshit.
Right.
But, spend some time getting strong, and the performance will improve. It happens every single time.
Every single time. Without fail.
Yep.
Nick, thanks for being with us today. Nick's been doing this a long time, and you need to listen to what we're talking about. Fighting may happen to you, and a smart man is prepared. A smart woman is prepared. Be prepared. Scouts on it. Be prepared. Thanks. See you next time on Starting Strength Radio.